Who gon' take it there? 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 Electricity, 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 electricity. You know what's in the air. 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 It's possibility. It's possibility. It's possibility. It's possibility.
Alright, so Zohran Mamdani and Bernie Sanders did a rally in New York. Bernie Sanders has jumped behind Zohran Mamdani, supporting him in this mayoral race. And so what you see happening at this rally is kind of the coming together of the Bernie Sanders kind of era of DSA politics, Democratic Socialist politics, and the new Zohran Mamdani era, which we don't exactly know where it's going to go yet, but it looks like he's probably going to win the mayoral race, which means that he is going to be in a position of power. And once he is in a position of power, his dynamic with the base that is going to elect him, or hopefully going to elect him, is going to change. And so there are interesting things to keep track of right now in terms of the coalition that Zohran is building, some of the potential cracks that could form in that coalition, and what that could mean. I think less so for his campaign and more so for like the actual arc of his mayorship. But definitely don't underestimate that the people running against Zohran Mamdani, be they Eric Adams or Cuomo, are definitely going to try to exacerbate any existing fissures in the coalition that appear. And so I wanted to show a couple things from this rally, some of the things that Bernie and Zohran were saying, as well as some of the questions that they answered, just to give a general vibe of what it was like. And there was also a moment where they were interrupted by a disruptor, not the person who was saying, you know, Zohran's a communist, you're a communist, blah, blah, blah. There was one guy who piped up saying that and then got removed. And that clip went around. I think a decent amount of people have seen that. It was pretty dumb. But then there was another person, a girl, who asked a question about the student encampments, and this rally was being held at a school, and this person felt that the students were like sequestered in the back. And so this person definitely like had at least some intention to be a little bit disruptive. And within this, you see some echoes of definitely a certain portion of the activist side of the left that engages in these tactics, whether it's a Bernie Sanders and AOC rally or it's a Zohran rally, of trying to disrupt those events as well in order to bring up the topic of Palestine, refocus the conversation on Palestine. And this is controversial because it's like, if this is the politician that is trying to help you, especially Zohran Mamdani, who has, you know, built his whole platform on standing up for Palestine and not backing down on that, disrupting him and trying to force him into uncomfortable positions as a politician to get him to sort of align with what the activists are saying or wanting or whatever seems counterproductive. But I think it's also important to acknowledge that this type of disruption is a feature of the left and it's not going anywhere. And any candidate who is going to come to power on the back of the Palestinian movement or the other movements that Zohran Mamdani is associated with is going to have to deal with a certain amount of this type of disruption. This is a part of the coalition, and it's important to be able to handle it because, like, Kamala Harris did a terrible job. So let's watch a few clips from this rally just so you guys can get a sense of what was going on there, and then we'll talk a little bit about the dynamic here.
And in the same year that Ronald Reagan won, not just the presidency, but the state of Vermont, Bernie was in his 30s, a Democratic Socialist, running against someone who had been powerful and well known for years, an opponent who struggled to pronounce his last name. There are some parallels. And Bernie won that race by 10 votes. And then he won again, and he won again, and he won again. And the motto of not just Bernie's campaign, but governance, was Burlington is not for sale.
Right now, you got people like Bill Ackman and others saying openly, front pages of the newspapers, we will spend as much as it takes to defeat this guy. you have the President of the United States working to make it harder for him to get elected. So what are these people, these oligarchs, afraid of? Seems to be a nice guy, dresses very nice, beautiful smile. Unlike me, he's a pleasant guy. What the hell are they afraid of? And what they are afraid of, brothers and sisters, is not only the question of bringing justice to New York City. You know what they're afraid of? They're afraid of Mr. Mamdani becoming an example to what can happen all over this country. Whoa, 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 whoa. There's a lot of hands going up.
Who's the Brooklyn College student?
What? I didn't hear. What are they saying?
Jim.
Okay. All right, one tonight. Baz, you got a question back there?
Let them have it.
Wait, look, there are many people raising their hands. I can't call on everybody at the same time.
Senator Sanders, can you hear me?
Loud and clear.
And Assemblyman Zohran Mamdani, can you hear me?
I too can hear you.
My name is Danya. I'm a student here at Brooklyn College. I'm Jewish, first-generation American by Soviet Jews. I am also a trans woman, and I attend school here, and I was here back in May as a student and as a private journalist here during the encampment. Since then, 4 faculty members have been fired, and these are adjunct faculty members. Since those 4 faculty members have been fired, 5 faculty members and 1 staff are now under investigation by the direction of Chancellor Felix Matos and President Michelle Anderson. We, as the students, have been targeted time and time again, not just by the administration, but by the faculty who are against us, and by the public safety who have been pointing me out to each other all night long, because I refuse to let the fact that Mr. Mamdani's team has put us Brooklyn College students in the very back with black wristbands, segregated from everybody else when we should be up front. We are the next generation of revolutionaries. We should be speaking to you. In 2016, I met you, Mr. Sanders, outside James Madison High School, our alma mater. How would you feel if you were a student now being told to sit in the back?
Thank you. Thank you for bringing this up. And I want to first address the points that you raised about the faculty members, about the repression. Because the point that is being raised is that we are seeing faculty members who are facing not just discipline, but termination for the crime of expressing solidarity with the fight for Palestinian human rights. And I know that this is a repression that is not unique to Brooklyn College. It is a repression that extends even to the ways in which we choose when to send police officers onto college campuses. The incident around encampments here at Brooklyn College, the decision to surge officers into that site is one that leaves students less safe than they were before. And that is why I have said, as a mayor who will live up to Eric Adams, of all people's statement in 2021, that New Yorkers need not choose between safety and justice, that I will be committed to delivering actual safety, not to the use of the term as a means of repression.
Okay, let's try this section over here. Woman, way in the back. Excuse me. Well, no, you cannot. Over there, please. Go. All right, brothers and sisters, I think what we have heard tonight from the questions, from Zohran, from me, these are unprecedented and difficult moments in our history. But you know what? This country has gone through difficult moments in the past. The essence of Trumpism is dividing us up. What we believe is bringing our people together. They are the 1%, we are the 99%. Let us stand together, let us defeat oligarchy and make New York and America the places we know they can become.
All right, so by and large, you have, a steady focus from Bernie and Zohran Mamdani on the issues that have carried them this far, the platforms that have gotten people to care about them in the first place, mainly talking about the economics of living in a city like New York, living in America, talking about healthcare. By and large, that is the tone of this rally here. And when it comes to this disruptor, what she was trying to do is call attention to the students, the protesters that faced a lot of being targeted by the state, by officials at the school that they go to. So I think that this criticism was born out of wanting to hear that Zohran Mamdani is still focused on that and is still focused on delivering justice, which, it should be noted, that is something that he does have the power to do. This is not somebody that is disrupting this rally to say that you should end the genocide in Gaza right now, which we all know that Zohran Mamdani, even if he was the most powerful mayor in the history of the city, he still wouldn't be able to do that. But I do think the problem here is that this came off as very focus on me. It's very personalized. She says, we are the fighters. We are the future generation. We should be at the front, not the back. I mean, I think that is losing the plot a little bit because you're not talking about the broader issue. You're talking more about this issue that you face as a student. And that's important. And it's good to appeal to Zohran Mamdani on that basis. But disrupting this rally with that message, I think, just has the effect of making people kind of roll their eyes. And I only say disrupt because it appears that after that question, that woman or maybe somebody else who was in the same group keeps wanting to essentially bogart more space and take up more space in this rally and keep talking. So Bernie does a good job of kind of getting things back on track. And there is a reality at these events that when somebody does this, there's kind of no choice but for them to be kicked out, right? Like, what are you going to do? I'm kind of reminded of when Bernie was confronted by Black Lives Matter protesters at one of his rallies in his first presidential campaign, and he left the stage and he let them take over the mic. And that was the wrong move. It was bad. It looked weird. And I understand why in the moment he felt like, well, okay, they're yelling at me on this basis of racial injustice. So the best thing that I can do is give them the platform. But at the end of the day, I think that capitulating when somebody is trying to yell you off stage is not the right thing to do. One way or the other, you have to maintain control of this event that you're holding. But as I mentioned before, there is a wrong way to do that. And Kamala Harris, I think the way she responded to these type of protests was kind of the nail in the coffin, or one of the nails in the coffin of her campaign. Because, it's becoming clearer and clearer from some data that's coming out now that Gaza was the biggest issue that turned voters off of Kamala Harris in 2024, which is something that I was saying from before the election even happened. And, she thought that she was handling it right by saying, we're working tirelessly for a ceasefire, but I'm speaking. That was the wrong way to handle it, because those activists then felt shut out entirely from the conversation. So Zohran is in a difficult position here, though, because he is closer aligned to what these activists want and from the perspective they're coming from. But he also cannot capitulate endlessly. At the end of the day, he's trying to win a race here. And so the activists that might do these type of disruptions want to refocus the conversation on a certain thing, like Palestine, and not really acknowledge the fact that if Zohran Mamdani is going to win and make any type of positive change at all, he has to speak to a message that is going to appeal to a lot of people. And if people who are going to vote in a general election, so that's not necessarily people who are aligned with the left or the Democratic Party, a lot of them will be, but not all of them. And if people start to get the perception that Zohran Mamdani is just endlessly capitulating to people like this who are yapping and not focused on the issues that concern them in their lives, it's going to make it a lot more likely that he's going to lose. And like I said, that's the type of division that if Cuomo and his people can figure out how to capitalize on, they're going to. I want to say, this lady is not some kind of paid agitator or something like that. She's just not. This is clearly a person who is there because she believes in the cause and she was a part of these encampments. And I want people to actually understand why she would do this. I know I'm focusing on this a lot and it seems like division and it's frustrating. I get that it's frustrating what she's doing. It's frustrating the idea that you would try to tear down somebody who is actively fighting for the cause that you're fighting for just because they're not using the same language as you or whatever. But the reason she's doing this is because Zohran Mamdani is now moving towards more focus on the economic populism message that he's putting forth. And that's smart. But from the perspective of an activist like that who is more singularly focused on that issue, if Zohran Mamdani is focused more on this platform of delivering economic wins for average New Yorkers, that is going to pull him away from focusing on this issue of Gaza. And so it is necessary for there to be voices that are maybe a little disruptive, but ultimately trying to refocus the conversation on what popularized Zohran as a candidate in the first place. Though I will say that what is important for him to focus on right now is the economic populism. And I think the note that Bernie ended on is the most important thing to emphasize. Because like I said, this type of disruptive tactic and this, style of activism is not going to go away. And especially as Zohran Mamdani continues to build power, there will be more disruptions like this. And so I want you guys to understand where they're coming from. They're recognizing that by even becoming the mayor, Zohran Mamdani is effectively becoming a part of the establishment. And make no mistake that his set of incentives is going to change once that happens. Doesn't mean that he's going to become, establishmentarian and turn his back on everything. But it means that anybody who comes into power, all of a sudden they have a different set of expectations and resources and lack of resources at their disposal. And that is going to change what they are and aren't able to do or focus on. And activists are not wrong for noticing that, noticing those trends happening and pointing it out. But what Bernie says at the end here is, unity, focusing on this idea of unity, and that the Trump project and the reactionary project going back way before Trump came around is to divide people and to specifically divide the working class so that a real movement cannot be achieved that will fundamentally restructure America economically. And the only way that any candidate, whether it's Bernie Sanders or Zohran Mamdani or somebody who's even more communister than that, the only way they're going to do anything is if there is a lot of unity behind them. Because even this method of disruption, right? The theory of the disruption method is that you can force change by getting in the way of society functioning as normal. And that includes political rallies of, more left-wing DSA candidates. But the problem is, if you're a small amount of people creating an enormous amount of disruption, right? Like, let's talk about real disruption, like, in society. You're pretty easy to get rid of. It's pretty easy to fix that problem. In other words, the way to solve that problem is not going to be to capitulate to your demands. It's going to be to disappear the people who are causing that problem. But if you have a broad base of solidarity and unity that is also participating in that disruption, like a general strike or some kind of broad demand for change, that is the kind of thing that causes society to change on a dime, that forces the powers that be to either capitulate or get out of the way. You have to have the broad base of support, which means that doing what Zohran Mamdani is doing, building up this understanding of the working class of New York, that they're all in this together, and that by uniting behind this actionable and simplified agenda, they can change the state of affordability in New York, and that will make things better for everyone. So that's the right message. And ultimately, whether people disrupt or not, you got to just keep pushing. You can't capitulate to every activist or every person who makes noise because they disagree with you. But at the same time, the answer is not to shut the door here either, because people who are doing what this woman is doing are a source of power on the left that will allow us to challenge the violent fascist movement that we're up against. We need angry people. We need uncompromising people. And we need people who understand deeply the necessity for putting yourself in the way of business as usual and who are willing to do it. And so it may be frustrating that this person is directing their anger towards somebody who's trying to, make the world a better place. But recognize that that pressure and that anger is a part of the job that Zohran Mamdani is signing up for. And how he handles taking criticism like that and not allowing it to knock him off focus, but also taking into account when people are saying, hey, you're getting a little bit far away from something that you promised to stand for. It's just a necessary part of his project. And so the people who are holding him to account in that way are also a necessary part of the project.